We're still up to chapter 16, the sports day, and this is part 3. Eric did lie low, as it turned out, till almost 1 o'clock. Roy did his best to get away, but it wasn't easy. He had to entertain his cousin, show some interest in his uncle and aunt, and eat a light sandwich. During lunch, Roy suddenly remembered he'd volunteered to help with the chairs for sports day. His mum had her doubts about this, and his dad said it was no excuse for eating like a python, but they let him go. A minute later, he was in the street with his sports kit in his bag, money to spend, a couple of apples, and Eric. Eric was confused. He was following Roy because he didn't want to be on his own, but he didn't want to be in the street either. On the other hand, or paw, what else could he do? Roy, meanwhile, had begun eating an apple. He bit off a piece and held it out. Eric, despite his troubles, ate it up. Roy said, "I'll have to go to sports, you know. I'm in the relay." He swapped his bag to his other shoulder. "We've had it for the 3-legged, though, haven't we?" "Woof," agreed Eric. He hadn't thought of that. "We'd win the 5-legged, though," Roy said. "We'd walk it." At the corner of Clay Street and Apollo Road, Roy looked at his watch. It was 1:10. The sports was due to start at 2 o'clock. He said, "Let's go to the park for a bit." "That's what I was thinking," thought Eric. "And after that we'll go to the sports. They've got a pavilion there. They've got a groundsman's hut." He was thinking of places where Eric might hide if he had to. "After that, we'll think of something." At the park gates going in, Roy and Eric met Kenny Biggs coming in. He was kicking a ball and eating a stick of rock. Behind him, some way behind, came little Mulkey on a tricycle. He was eating a stick of rock too. Kenny said, "Hello, Roy. Hey, you've got that dog again." "Where'd you get your rock?" said Roy. "Russell's." "Whose dog is he, anyway?" "Give us a bite and I'll tell you." As he spoke, Roy lunged for the ball and dribbled off with it onto the grass. Meanwhile, Eric had his eye on a stick of rock. He was sitting up close to Mulkey's now stationary tricycle and staring hopefully at its rider. But Mulkey, no matter how little he was, knew what was going on. He laughed and bounced on his saddle and clutched his rock more tightly. "Mine." And there is a picture. Then, impulsively, or perhaps he just wanted to see what would happen, he held it out. Eric, to his credit, hesitated. He felt suddenly guilty. Taking sweets from a small child when you were a dog was wrong, and for that matter, unhygienic. At the same time, it was a particularly large stick of rock, far too big for Mulkey. At that moment, Alison Jukes came riding up on her bike, followed closely by Joan Spooner on hers. They were friends again, it seemed. "Hello, Mulkey," said Alison. "It's that dog again," said Joan. "And he wants your rock," Alison said, whereupon Mulkey immediately snatched it away and took a bite himself. Eric, with mixed feelings, trotted over to join Kenny and Roy. Having failed to agree a swap, they were kicking the ball back and forth. Joan said, "Whose dog is he really?" "He's not telling," said Kenny. "I don't think he knows." "I know," said Roy. "I know more than you think." He turned his attention to Mulkey. "I'll give you half this apple for a bite of rock." Mulkey studied the apple. "Don't you, Mulkey?" said Alison. "You keep it." "Ask him whose dog it is," said Kenny. Then Roy had an idea. "Listen, Mulkey, if you give me a bite, this dog will shake hands with you." He crouched and whispered to Eric, "Go on, Eric, be a sport." Eric considered the matter. He could see that Roy was getting carried away. Also, by rights, if any rock was going, he should get it. Then again, he looked across at Mulkey's little beaming face and thought, why not? Eric approached Mulkey, who by this time had left his tricycle and joined the others on the grass. "On the command, shake hands," said Roy. "This dog will shake hands." Then he said, "Shake hands." Eric at once held out his paw. For a moment Mulkey was overcome with shyness, but of course he was delighted too. Soon he was holding Eric's paw in his own sticky hand and shaking it proudly. "There," said Roy. "Now, on the command, bite rock. This boy will—" Roy got his rock, though the amount was carefully monitored by Kenny. After that there was a general rush to see what else Eric could do. "Get him to say, 'How do you do?'" said Joan. "Like that Australian dog," Kenny said. "Get him to count," said Alison. Roy, flushed with success, got Eric to count. "What's 2 plus 2?" he said. "Woof, woof, woof, woof," barked Eric. He was getting carried away. "6 take away 4, said Roy. "Woof, woof." The square root of 9. Roy was good at maths. Woof, woof, woof. So was Eric. It was about now that Kenny and Alison exchanged puzzled looks. They realised something was going on. So did Joan, but couldn't quite tell what it was. It's a trick, said Alison. No, it's not. He's just a brainy dog, said Roy. Then Joan said, all right then. What's 496 plus 283? Eric hardly hesitated. Woof, 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 woof. Hang on, said Roy. We'll be here all day. What's the capital of Peru? Said Kenny. What's the time? Said Joan. Eric made no reply but continued to look expectantly at his audience. It was as though he was waiting for a question he could answer, which in truth he was. He hadn't had this much attention since his 10th birthday. Roy said, wait a minute, let me have a go. And he said, here's a good one. Which of these girls do you like the best, her or her? Eric cocked his head on one side, then on the other. He looked Joan and Alison up and down. The first thought in his mind was neither. However, secretly, so secretly he hadn't even told Roy, though Roy knew anyway, Alison was his favourite. And of course she knew as well. While Eric was seeming to make his mind up, Kenny said, how's he going to choose? He can point, said Joan. That's it, Roy said, point. And so, eventually, Eric put out his paw and pointed to Alison. She laughed. He is a brainy dog, she said, and then, have a crisp. After this gathering began to break up, Kenny had to take Milky home and get ready for the sports day. Joan and Alison needed to collect their kit. As she rode off, Alison tossed a final crisp to Eric. He, despite its wayward flight through the air, caught it up and crunched it. As she rode off, Joan called out, whose dog is he really? What's his name? Roy paused for a second and said, Eric. What? Eric. I can't hear you. It's just as well, said Roy. He watched Joan disappear through the gates. You'd never believe it. The end of chapter 16. What a big chapter that was.